What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy. Want to wish you a very happy Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. I know that things look a little bit different in the Bleacher Report app. Obviously, assuming you're watching there, we're going to get this video back up on YouTube. We've run into some technical difficulties as of late, but this should be back on the YouTube channel after the fact over at Blogging the Boys. So thanks to everyone. Obviously, the Super Bowl happened recently, and I was there in New Orleans covering it for SB Nation. So there's a lot that's been going on. I've been a little bit sick. And on top of all that, my camera isn't working. So I know it looks a little bit grainier than usual. I promise I have proper cameras given my life and my profession as a blogger. And none of them are working right now. So this is the standard MacBook Pro camera that is working here. So I appreciate everybody being willing to kind of build the plane as we fly. I am live every Tuesday and Thursday in the Bleacher Report app to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of the Dallas Cowboys, all the happenings, all the news, all the notes, all the things that piss us off. And today, on the subject of technical difficulties, I mentioned I was at the Super Bowl. The Thursday leading up to it, I do these every Tuesday and Thursday, as mentioned. That Thursday, I ran into internet issues at the convention center in New Orleans and wasn't able to do my normal show. What I planned on discussing then is what we're getting into here today, and that is the argument against Ashton Jeanty. The Boise State running back is phenomenal. I understand there are many of you who feel very passionately that he should be the next member of the Dallas Cowboys, but I think that would be an incredibly unwise thing to do. It has nothing to do with Ashton specifically. It has everything to do with this team and how we forecast them to act and how we know them to be. And really more than that, it has everything to do with the positional value of what a running back is and what it represents in today's NFL. So all that being said, I am anti-Ashton Jeanty. There are very few things that the Cowboys could do in the first round that would upset me. And I will be very honest with you and say that I will cope myself into liking the pick if they ultimately go this direction. But I would very, very, very much prefer the Cowboys to do just about anything else. So in order to kind of assess what we're looking at here, I wanted to take a look at the Dallas Cowboys depth chart. Shout out to my friends over at Our Lads. They do an amazing job, obviously, tracking depth charts all across the NFL. Let me zoom in here so you can see. This is the Cowboys offensive depth chart. Now, just so we're all on the same page, green means unrestricted free agent. So those are players who are set to be free agents in the next month or so. Black means restricted free agent. Gray means exclusive rights free agent. These are players, that's not what I meant to highlight. These are players basically that will, in all likelihood, excuse me, not be anywhere else, but will be playing for the Dallas Cowboys in 2025. So this is what we're working with on offense here. As you can see, offensively, the Cowboys have a handful of free agents, and I don't really think that any of them are super concerning. Brandon Cooks didn't have 1,000 yards with Dallas. It's unfortunate, but it just kind of is what it is. Chuma Edoga had some good times. Thanks a lot. Zach Martin, if you retire, if you go play for the Chiefs or whatever, man, we're not going to hold it against you. Cooper Rush, I think, is probably back. I think the fact that Brian Schottenheimer is the team's head coach works in his favor, that continuity factor, et cetera, et cetera. Trey Lance, I really don't have to get into. I think that what's known is known. And finally, Rico Dowdle, which kind of parlays us into the Ashton Jeanty discussion. Rico, I think, was amazing for the Cowboys, all things considered, with all relative context. But that being said, just because he's a free agent doesn't mean the Cowboys have to panic and go out and find, the first available, whatever, first round guy that they can draft in Ashton Jeanty. Defensively, because I think this matters when you're talking about what the Cowboys should do with their first round pick. Obviously, there's a lot of issues here. There's a lot of green, as you can see, more green than was raining down in New Orleans where I was when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. DeMarcus Lawrence, Chauncey Golston, Linval Joseph, Osa Odigizua, a potential candidate for the franchise tag, maybe a transition tag. I don't think that any of us really think that that's going to happen, but if there is somebody who's going to get tagged on the Cowboys, I think it's definitely Osa. Carlos Watkins, Carl Lawson, who is going to feed the idea for the Cowboys that they can sign journeyman players out of the bargain bin at training camp. Carl Lawson, I think, was better than any of us, kind of anticipated, and they want to bring him back on a one-year deal, something like that. I don't think any of us would be really upset about it. Eric Kendricks, Nick Vigil, CJ Goodwin is listed as a corner here. I was actually talking to my friends at Our Lads. We all know CJ Goodwin's not a corner. We all know that, you can't see him there. We all know he's a specialist, a gunner, whatever you want to call him. They are thinking about working in some sort of specialty, positional, whatever you want to call it, so that players like CJ Goodwin can be properly assessed. Amani Oruwariye, shout out to him in the Cincinnati Bengals game. Jordan Lewis, Izzy Mukwamu, and then while we're at it here, we can talk about Brian Anger and Trent Sieg. You'll notice Kavontae Turpin is a restricted free agent, Wanye Thomas an exclusive rights free agent, as is Brock Hoffman. And so I wanted to look at this from this perspective because look at all these needs. I mean, like, look at all of the needs. Look at all of the ways in which the Cowboys could obviously, spend their first round pick. There are a number of holes. And I actually did a podcast with my friends at Our Lads earlier today on Tuesday. Here's the thing. For anyone who does not understand, someone is going to look at the Dallas Cowboys roster today or in our current moment and is going to say to themselves, wow, this roster is so bad. How did it get to be this way? And the answer is because this is the attrition that has taken hold over the course of 2 years now. It isn't hyperbole. It isn't exaggeration. It isn't being silly to say that the Dallas Cowboys did quite literally nothing a year ago. Last offseason, they did effectively nothing. Did they sign Eric Kendricks and bring Zeke back for vibes or whatever? Yes, those things technically happened. But the Cowboys saw themselves get worse in 2024 and then played worse across 2024. And so here we are now, and they're getting even worse, and injuries have happened, things have taken their toll, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you can look at a roster like this and say, wow, this is a situation that is quite dire. And when you're looking at it through that lens, which I think is fair and is objective and is real, I don't think that you can rationally say that they can draft somebody like Ashton Jeanty. I'm not even completely against the idea of drafting a running back in the first round. I think if you are a team who's well-equipped, a team who's well-stocked, if you're a team who has an adult in charge, then you're in a position to be able to pay that luxurious price. But that's what this is. This is paying premium rent when you can't afford that right now. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, you got to get a one-bedroom apartment, guys. You got to get a studio apartment at this particular point in time. You do not have the flexibility to go out on a limb and spend a premium asset like this on what is a luxury in a technical fashion. Is that unfortunate for those of you who want Ashton Jeanty? Certainly, I'm sympathetic towards that idea, but it would be irresponsible allocation of resources for the Cowboys to go down this road. Now, that being said, there are ways to address this, right? We can sit here and let's put this back up on your screen here. Where's my button? I've lost it already. If the Cowboys are aggressive in free agency and they go out and they sign a second wide receiver, if they go out and they address offensive line depth, if they go out and sign a running back, we can take a look at some of these free agents in a moment. If they bring back some of these people, if they somehow are able to bring back Osa Digizua, if DeMarcus Lawrence wants to come back for one last ride, if Jordan Lewis comes back for one last ride, all of a sudden, now you're not in as perilous of a situation. All of a sudden, now you can maybe afford that two-bedroom condo, right? You can afford that higher rent. You can get in the city or the area, the zip code that you prefer. But as things stand right now, if the Cowboys behave the way we have known them to behave over the course of the last few years, over the course of really a decade now, then I would not anticipate that they're going to be in a position where they can ultimately do anything, legitimately ambitious like what taking a running back in the first round would be. That is my general argument against the idea of Ashton Jeanty. Again, I'm not against the idea of Ashton Jeanty as a professional football player. I think he will be a great running back in the NFL. I think that that's especially true if he finds himself in the right and proper situation. But I don't think that you can make an argument that the right and proper situation is the Dallas Cowboys. Say you're an Ashton Jeanty fan. Say that that's who you root for. Say that that's your primary rooting interest. Forget the fact that you're a Cowboys fan for a moment here. I don't think you want Ashton Jeanty to go to the Cowboys. Sure, you do on the level that it would be a different kind of fame and all that sort of stuff, the Cowboys of it all. But if you're being fair and objective and rational about the football of it all, I don't think that there's an argument to be made that you would prefer him to go to Dallas over, say, teams like the Chargers or the Raiders or whatever the case may be. Those teams who I don't believe in personally are more equipped to be able to make that luxurious pick right now in today's moment in time, pre-free agency, to be clear, than the Dallas Cowboys are. And I think that this is somewhat exemplified by the way that the national media is starting to kind of catch on to this situation. Let's take a look at Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft, which dropped on Tuesday. This is a process, obviously, that we go through overtime. Let's look through it quickly. Abdul Carter goes 1 overall. Not shocking. Cam Ward's the first quarterback off the board, goes to Cleveland. Travis Hunter to the Giants. That would really suck. In case you're curious, Shedeur Sanders does go to the Raiders at 6. Tyler Warren to the Jets at 7. Excuse me. This cough, I can't shake it. Let's move on. The Cowboys do not go Ashton Jeanty in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. The Dallas Cowboys, according to Daniel Jeremiah, in his latest mock, do something that they have done only once since 1991, and that is draft a defensive tackle in the first round of the NFL draft. The only instance outside of Russell Maryland in 1991, who went number 1 overall, was Mozzie Smith a couple of years ago. But DJ has the Cowboys going Walter Nolan out of Mississippi, and I think that there's an argument for this. It would be disappointing on a lot of levels. I think we all want a shiny new toy, but you look here, I know that there's a lot of McMillan fans out there. As a Sun Devil myself, it is what it is, but I would not say no to him. Ashton Jeanty falls all the way to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21 overall in Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft. And again, on the subject of if you're an Ashton Jeanty fan, if you're rooting for him and what's in his particular best interest, I think falling to the Steelers, a team who has been disappointing in their own right for the last decade in different ways, shapes, and forms, I think that is a much more supportive environment for Ashton Jeanty than the Dallas Cowboys are. Again, not a perfect one. Nobody is the Philadelphia Eagles except for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think that Ashton Jeanty is much more set up for success in Pittsburgh than he is in Dallas. And we see the run here, by the way. I mentioned the Chargers. Omarion Hampton, the Tar Heel goes to them, obviously. They're in a situation where they're looking. I think that there was another one. Travion Henderson, that's what it was, sneaks into the first round and goes to the Minnesota Vikings. I know that there are a lot of Cowboys fans who would love a world where you do something else in the first round, maybe Lane Henderson or pick your running back. There are a lot. This is a deep class. I mentioned I'm a Sun Devil, advocated for Cam Scatterbo. If you want to go down that road, I know some people don't think he's an every down back in the NFL, but if Quinshon Judkins is your name, I mean, whatever. If Henderson does fall to the second or the third, again, we're in mid-February here, and so a lot of this evaluation will change, especially through the NFL Combine and through pro days and things like that. But my point is that, especially when you factor in that there are two other quality running backs going in the first round right after Jeanty here. I mean, think about this for a second. If you believe that Ashton Jeanty is truly this generational, because the people who are arguing for this idea, that is what they are saying. That is their argument. That is the hill they are dying on, that Ashton Jeanty is one of one. He is a player to come along in a generation. We haven't seen anything like him. I wouldn't, stand on that personally. I think he's incredibly talented. I just wouldn't go that far. And my point is, he is so otherworldly talented that our running back goes right after him in Daniel Jeremiah's estimation, at least as of February 18th, and then another one goes 2 picks later. We have 3 running backs in 4 picks here, according to Daniel Jeremiah. And so I'm just not willing to sell the farm and use the most premium asset that the Cowboys are going to have across the offseason as a whole, which is made all the more valuable by the fact that they won't be active in free agency. I'm not willing to spend that on a running back. I'm much more willing to be patient, to wait, to trade up with some of the compensatory picks that the Cowboys are in all likelihood going to get. I think that is a much more practical, a much more fair, a much more grounded, down-to-earth perspective that the Cowboys can and really should have, that they should operate with, I should say, as we get closer to the NFL draft. I love Ashton Jeanty. He's awesome, but it's just not worth it, in my personal opinion, and I hope that the Cowboys obviously feel similarly. Speaking of the Cowboys, we did get a few quotes today to kind of catch you up on the latest and the greatest. Here is shout out to my guy Joe Hoyt of DLLS. Matt Eberflus making his first appearance, discussion with members of the local media since returning to the team, was asked about helping Brian Schottenheimer, who's obviously a first-time head coach, and said that he told Brian Schottenheimer he would be there for him. Matt Eberflus also had a quote about Micah Parsons, as you can see here. Shout out to the mothership, DallasCowboys.com. Said Micah, obviously talking about Parsons, my fellow BR content creator. Micah is a premier pass rusher. We're going to use him that way. Certainly, and he's one heck of an athlete that can do a lot of different things for us on defense. That is nice. A few more quotes here. Clayton Adams, new Dallas Cowboys offensive coordinator. Shout out to ESPN's Todd Archer for this. The same in terms of what Adams wants from his offensive line. We all know that Adams obviously got the Cardinals run game moving and grooving. Said the same thing that I want from every player on offense, and that is to create violence in the game. Be aggressive, run, hit, he said. I think that every decision that we make schematically needs to lean that direction. I like to hear that. I don't like that if that means you're going to draft Ashton Jeanty at 12 overall. Finally, Linda Wells on changes says there will be some similarity, but one of the biggest things that we're really focusing on offensively is being a little bit more physical up front, really on both sides of the ball. As a team being physical, dominating the line of scrimmage. I think that we all want to see this in spades. I think we all want to see the Cowboys kind of return to being respectable as a football team. I think that has not happened in a very long time. There was a quote flying around in the aftermath of the Super Bowl about the Eagles and their devotion to analytics. And I think it was Kevin Clark of Omaha Productions who tweeted that he had visited the Eagles and that somebody had told him, we like analytics, but, our analytics are the trenches. And that's what makes the Eagles so great. And we know that obviously better than most people, I would say, is that what makes Philadelphia so intimidating, so ferocious, so unbeatable, so inevitable, and really just everything that they are is the fact that they cannot be stopped in the trenches. And that is highly, 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 highly annoying. Speaking of the Eagles, I did want to touch on something else. I wrote about this at blogontheboys.com, so everybody can check that out. Let me pause that for you. As you can see here, the title is a bit frustrating if you're a Cowboys fan. Maybe it isn't. Jeffrey Lurie sets the example that Jerry Jones should be following. What are we talking about here? Maybe you don't know. Jeffrey Lurie is the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. He bought the team in 1994. It's not quite an apples to apples comparison to Jerry Jones, but you're talking about almost the same data set in terms of time. And if you evaluate things that way, from 1994 to now, especially from 1994 to now, Jeffrey Lurie now has more Super Bowl rings than Jerry Jones. Obviously, if you evaluate their ownerships as a whole, if you just evaluate Jerry Jones as an owner, he's still leading 3-2. But the reality is that, look, I love the Dallas Cowboys. I root for the Dallas Cowboys. I want the Dallas Cowboys to succeed as much as any of you who are watching this, and I appreciate you for watching this. But what I'm going to say is fair and reasonable, and that is ultimately the way I try to be. Jerry Jones does not hold a candle to Jeffrey Lurie as an owner in the NFL. Now, does Jerry Jones look after his guys or whatever you want to call it? I'm not arguing that case. I'm arguing relative to the goal that we as fans ultimately care about, and that is winning football games. And in that sense, Jeffrey Lurie is leagues above Jerry Jones and how he is operating. And that is pretty obvious, I think, at this point in time. Is Jeffrey Lurie in the Hall of Fame? No. Is he as famous? Is he doing episodes of Entourage or Landman? No. But that's kind of the point here, is Jeffrey Lurie understands that he has a role as an owner and that there are some things that role does not operate over. There are some worlds where that role is not valuable. There are some things that role is not involved with. And that's where people like Howie Roseman come in, and obviously people like Nick Sirianni. And that is really one of the fatal flaws relative to the Dallas Cowboys. And if we look at this was a report, by the way. I wouldn't even call it a report, but this was noted in Sports Illustrated. Shout out to Albert Breer, who wrote about this. You can see here I wrote, Jerry Jones can learn a lot from Jeff Lurie. This is the part that's important. Again, Albert Breer wrote about this on Monday. This is the quote from Jeffrey Lurie in the write-up and the bit that is important. My philosophy is, Lurie said, pausing for a second to consider. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit for you. You're obviously trying to run a sound business, but I think success is determined by your success on the field and your success in the community. And so anything you can do to maximize those two, the value of that team is going to be appreciated more by your performance and your reputation in the community than anything else. It's not going to be the EBITDA in a certain year or 2 or 3 or 4. There's a reason we just sold limited partnerships. We're going to come back to this in a moment, for the highest price in sports history. It wasn't based on being the most profitable team at all. It's based on the performance over time and the reputation in the community and the forecasting of where we hope to be able to sustain over the next couple of years. It's much more than the financial bottom line. Now, I guess you could say, or I guess you could get criticized by some Wall Street analysts, but we don't operate that way. We just don't operate that way. This is Albert Breer's writing. Indeed, Lurie sold 8% of the Eagles in December to 2 family investment groups, with the valuation of the franchise coming back at $8.3 billion. That's billion with a B. That meant Lurie got $664 million, or roughly 3.5 times what he paid for the entire team in 94, for a small percentage that, as he sees it, will allow him to continue investing back into the team. What are we saying here? All right. Jeffrey Lurie sold, we're going to approximate here, 8% of the Eagles back in December and got a quick influx of cash. $664 million, as we just read, as we just found out, as we just all learned together. I'm going to be honest with you here. This hat is a Boston Bruins hat. It's not a financial analyst hat. I'm not a financial professional. I'm not a Wall Street guru, but I understand these things in layman's terms, which is what I'm going to ultimately express them in. If you're a financial analyst or a Wall Street guru yourself, I would certainly welcome your feedback, your input, your expertise, whatever you want to call it. I will defer to you. That being said, Jerry Jones is incredibly wealthy. Right. There's just no doubt about it. Right. Like these are kind of basic common facts that we can live and operate in. Jerry Jones is incredibly wealthy. We're talking about the 1% of human beings on this planet. That being said, NFL teams are reaching an evaluation that isn't sustainable for one single person, one single family, one single entity to operate over. We just discussed the evaluation for the Eagles was over, what was the exact number? $8.3 billion. That just, there's a very different thing, or a very big difference between an evaluation and worth and actual movable cash or assets that one of these human beings, these owners, has in their pockets, so to speak. And so just because the Eagles are valued at $8.3 billion, do you think Jeffrey Lurie's walking around with that much, in his bank account, right? Like that's not how these things ultimately work. And so if we apply that same sort of logic or thought process to Jerry Jones, he is a singular person, right? So it stands to reason when people say things like the Cowboys are cheap, the Cowboys don't want to spend money, the Cowboys are, frugal, right? Well, it's because they're one singular entity and they don't have the assets to move in the ways that the other teams do. Forget the Eagles for a second. Let's talk about Washington. They spent a ton in free agency last year. How did that happen? Why did that happen? I don't know. It's because Washington has like 14 owners, right? Washington, if they're in a pinch, if they want to do something, if they want to sign a player, they need a signing bonus, they need some cash right now, right away, or they want to do an improvement to their stadium or to their team facility, and they need that cash today. They have to fulfill and cash a check right now. They can hit up Magic Johnson or Josh Harris or whoever is involved in the group that is ultimately a part of the ownership team, and they can make that happen. And Jeffrey Lurie in the story, obviously, this detailed that he got a quick influx of cash for $664 million, and the price he paid was a small minority stake, sharehold, whatever you want to call it, in the Eagles as a franchise, and he got $664 million. So that was in December. Let's fast forward a month from now. We're going to see the Eagles hand out some deals that are aggressive and that are attacking in free agency the way that we traditionally do. And they're going to have signing bonuses because if you're a player, the Eagles are courting you and are saying, we can give you that cash today. We will give you that right now. You put pen to paper, that money is in your bank account because we have that money. We can move it right now. It isn't worth, it isn't in some holding, it isn't tied up in this. You don't have to wait for X or Y or Z. You can have it today, and then we can see you in practice tomorrow. And Jeffrey Lurie is exploiting something that the NFL recently allowed. And in case you don't know, because some of these things get lost in the weeds, it was late last year when the NFL allowed these types of things to happen, these minority stakes, these minority shares to be bought in franchises, and the maximum ownership that was available to be sold was 10%. I'm going to put this back up on your screen here because this is going to frustrate you even more than you're probably already frustrated here. All right. The New York Giants. And as I wrote here, one of the league's true Tiffany brands. This is like, the New York Giants are NFL royalty. You're talking about the Maras and the Tishes, and obviously there's the crossover with the Steelers and the Rooneys and all this stuff. There was a report this past week that the Giants, the team we just discussed, are looking to sell up to 10% of their team. And again, I noted this here for you. It's worth noting the NFL only began to allow private equity firms to purchase stakes in teams late last year. So this is a new thing, somewhat, that NFL teams are now exploiting. And why are the Giants doing this, RJ? What's happening here? Why does this matter? What's going on? The Giants, who have been down in the mud a little bit further than the Cowboys, I will admit, have looked at the Eagles and have said, we are one entity. We are one family. We are extraordinarily wealthy, but we don't have the movable assets to be able to compete and sign and do things today, here, now, snap your fingers the way the Eagles can. So how can we fix this? How can we rectify the situation? What means can we reach to ultimately compete and contend? I know we can sell a minority share in our team and have a quick infusion of cash and be able to do what we want to do the way that Philadelphia is. That is the way you compete in today's NFL. We are learning this. This is an important offseason in that sense. We've seen the Miami Dolphins do this. Granted, they've been kind of in this game for a long time. They have a lot of different owners, and that's a very complicated situation here that thankfully we don't have to track. But the Giants have understood the assignment. The Giants are clearly committed to winning. And the Giants, who again are NFL, I would even use the word dignitaries here, are willing to put themselves in a situation where they let somebody else sit at the table. And that is why this, in all likelihood, will never happen for the Dallas Cowboys, because going down this path, going down this road, allowing somebody else in the room means sharing the spotlight, means it's no longer just the Joneses who own this. Even if they own, Jeffrey Lurie, it was reported in Albert Breer's story, owns 85% of the Eagles, obviously a clear controlling interest. Even if it were to be 99%, it's not 100. Even if it were to be 99.9%, it's not 100. It means somebody else has a voice. It may be small, it may be tiny, it may be the size and the squeak of a mouse, but somebody else has a verifiable, undeniable voice, a seat at the table, because they bought their way in. And again, I'm not saying that the Cowboys are poor or the Cowboys are cheap or anything like that, but they don't have the assets to contend and to compete. They're simply bringing a knife to a nuke fight at this point in time. The Eagles, and soon enough the Giants, have cashed the Commanders, as we just discussed. We're talking about the three primary rivals of the Cowboys within the NFC East. All these teams, because of the financial decisions that they have made, have the capabilities to ultimately do things that the Cowboys cannot. And so the Cowboys, as we've discussed many different times in many different mediums, have relied way too long on the notion that they're the Cowboys and it's going to work out and they can lure people in based on that. That may have been true at some point in time. But now, in today's moment, there are players who not only don't buy that anymore, who not only weren't alive the last time the Cowboys were good, but now they come in and they say, okay, I'll think about playing for you, but I want my cash right now. And the Cowboys can't give it to them. The Cowboys have to backload these things and make these things work and make them happen in ways that can be affordable for them, because they have other business ventures, because they're billionaires, whatever the case may be. Whereas the Eagles can say, hold up, let me make a phone call. Oh yeah, let's get a quick $600 million in here, almost $700 million. And we'll get to work. And you want your $20 million signing bonus today? Cool. No problem. No big deal. We'll get it to you. We'll wire it. We'll transfer it. We'll Venmo, whatever. And we'll dance. And that is why the Cowboys continue to lose and lose and lose in these discussions, in these moments, in these conversations. And the lack of willingness to play the game that other NFL teams are playing is going to continue to haunt and to hurt and to hinder them. You're banking on the fact that somebody's going to want to play for you because reasons, and that is not a verifiable way to go about building a roster in today's day and age. It is a curious decision, to say the least, the way the Dallas Cowboys are choosing to operate. But I think we all already knew that. So don't draft Ashton Jeanty, sell a minority stake, and let Matt Eberflus do what he wants with Micah Parsons. Those are kind of the big, main, important takeaways from today's conversation, I think. I'm proud of myself in that I only coughed a couple of times. This has been at me for, 2 weeks now. You can tell if you listen to me a lot that my voice is a little bit beaten down. But so that's just kind of the way things go. It's that time of year. It's a little bit cold outside, so I hope you're doing all right. Hope you bundle up and eat some warm food. Also, shout out again specifically to the Blogging the Boys YouTube audience. I know that it was strange not having these episodes up and whatnot, the timing of the Super Bowl and everything, and the technical challenges, et cetera, et cetera. Apologies. I have your back and I'm always taking care of you. Again, apologies to the crowd at large about the camera issue. I'm going to look into that, but for whatever reason, no, I have several cameras. None of them would work. The only one that would tonight was the one that is a part of my actual MacBook Pro. That was not something that I anticipated having to deal with. But, sometimes that's just the way it goes. Sometimes, the lights turn on and you got to dance. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to dance. You guys pick the song and we're going to have a good time. And we're going to figure out a way to kind of move forward in a way to make this whole production sing. So, all that being said, it's we're getting to the last kind of lull, last kind of quiet time, because the NFL Combine does start next week. So we'll get a fresh batch of quotes and some insight, obviously, from Brian Schottenheimer. Jerry Jones will do his bus tour, and we'll probably talk about why he doesn't want to sell a minority stake in the team, because reasons or whatever the case may be. So I think, needless to say, it's going to be an interesting 10 days or so. And we'll make sure to keep you updated, as always, on everything you need to know at bloggingtheboys.com. The Bleacher Report app has your back, as always. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa. You can like my Facebook page. Just search for RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on TikTok, rj.ochoa. Any and every single piece of content that I create has some level of ness that goes out on every single one of those platforms. So if you follow me on any one of them, obviously multiple of them, I can promise you that you will be covered and you will be good to go and you will be set straight, because that's my job, is to make sure that you have everything that you need relative to your Dallas Cowboys fandom. And I take it very seriously, because you deserve the absolute best. So thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out this particular evening. I hope you will have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.